There's a child in the room, so I'm not sure I should be able to say that he's a penetration practice manager, but it sounds a little dirty. For mainstream security, he has over 10 years of information technology and security experience. He's been presented at many stuffy IT auditor conferences, which everyone loves, right? But when it came to giving a talk at BsidesRI, we jumped at the chance, so we're really grateful for him to be here. There's Mr. James Edge.
Thank you, guys. I guess I got a quick question. I want to gauge the experience of the audience. How many people are in the IT security realm, either on the attack side or the defense side? Excellent. I guess I want to give a little bit about myself and my background to kind of tell you where I'm coming from and why I'm doing this talk. He mentioned that I've done presentations at stuffy IT auditor conferences, and that's what I was. How many people in here kind of just fell into their IT security? A lot of people have. I was a mainframe operator at a bank that got purchased, and I was looking for another job, and I ended up being an IT auditor for the state of New York. I'm originally from the Albany, New York area. I've been living 6 years in Atlanta, Georgia. And how many people here are sports fans of this area? New England Patriots fans? I tell you, you guys are all set now when you get to the AFC Championship game. If Baltimore or anybody else is there, and you guys got Tim Tebow now, so you guys are set. You got the X Factor weapon going straight to the Super Bowl. But if you happen to meet up against Eli Manning and the New York Giants, you probably just lose again. I'm sorry. I'm apologizing now. What is this? I knew when I was speaking in Providence, Rhode Island, I told myself I was going to bring that up. So now that you're not going to listen to me anymore. So outside being an IT auditor, I got to actually do the penetration testing work because I knew some IT. I did that up in New York, did that in Georgia. I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, been there 6 years. Previous job before mainstream security, I worked for a Fortune Top 10 as a security analyst, where I just ended up getting stupid. Sitting there collecting a paycheck, working on workflows, doing approvals. And the reason I bring that up is because what I'm talking about today is hardware hacking. And while I'm not an electrical engineer, everything that I'm going to talk about was self-taught, and I pretty much did it and learned it so that brain cells wouldn't die at my former job. Luckily, and the reason the logo's up here, I work for a consulting company, Mainstream. Got to talk about them just for a second because they pay for me to come out here. And while I'm staying at a Best Western by the airport, I'm driving a Chevy Spark, which I guess better than a Fiat. They pay me to fly up here to Atlanta to talk, to drink beer, and to be my dorky self. So that's enough about the company. Now on to the talk. And what it is a show and tell. And what I like to start off with is my most memorable show and tell. Hopefully this will surpass it, being here drinking beer with you guys. But this takes me back to kindergarten. How many people here in their early 30s, the toys of the 80s?
Jack, raise that hand.
Not too many people here.
Parents in their early 30s?
I have to say the early mid-80s are the best time as a kid for toys, though I'm biased. And I bring this up because the last show and tell that I remember that I'm fond of is in kindergarten. And I remember I just got my new He-Man action figure. Everybody familiar with He-Man? Right, okay. So I remember bringing in Prince Adam. I mean, this is the guy, this is the alter ego, he becomes He-Man, if you don't know. And this just screams 80s. And I remember...
That's my outfit for the party tonight.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. Without the leggings though, just the fur. So I remember bringing him in, and I remember, the show and tell, talking about my He-Man action figure, and I remember, and as a kid you don't understand this, if you're 4, 5, 6 years old, you're bringing in your awesome new toy, the kindergarten teacher was commenting on the purple of his outfit. And as a little kid, now my adult takes over, putting words into my kid's mouth, I was pissed. I was like, how dare you knock the outfit of Prince Adam? He turns into He-Man, right? You know, forget about that he's wearing purple fur man panties. And that's why I bring this up, because I just like saying that. Now it's recorded. So what I'm actually here to talk to you about is the TP-Link WR703N. How many people are familiar with this particular device? This thing is effing awesome. It has become the standard device to break open for software and hardware hacking. It comes with a Chinese version of whatever operating system. But you put Linux on it, and I happen to use OpenWRT. How many people, all right, outside of this device, this is where, when I was working at that Fortune Top 10, getting stupid, I had this device because it had Linux on it, and I decided to crack it open and do all sorts of hardware hacking. People familiar with this device at all? I mean, you can still do awesome stuff on this, but it is seriously underpowered for what you want to do with any type of hardware hacking. So this device, amazing device, came out. For the, you get double the processing power in such a small package, plus it comes with USB, which takes a lot of effort to get the USB to work on this. So the fact that it comes with it is amazing. So a lot of people have taken this device and done amazing projects with it, and this is just my, I guess, random search on Google Images looking up device hacking for this, and this is a web radio that somebody put together. Somebody put together an I/O extender. I don't have a 3D printer, but they printed out a special case for it. The reason I'm doing this talk is this gentleman came up with the Minipwner idea, and this is his stuffed it in an Altoids tin. Somebody motion sensing web camera because it has a USB port. Not necessarily cracking open the device, but an interesting thing to do with it because it's so small. This one also helped me with my development on this talk. They actually access some of the GPIO connections on the device, and they use it for home automation. And I want to cut in for a second, because a lot of this talk, and I didn't know this would be going on. I am honored to have Adrian Crenshaw recording this. And I have to say, I was going to mention you anyway, because a lot of the stuff I talk about is the work that you've done with the Teensy and the Raspberry Pi. So I'm ripping him off, but I'm using it with this device. So maybe that's original in that. So about the TP-Link itself, it's a very low-cost device. Order them on eBay for less than 25 bucks. Small form factor. Comes with 802.11 BGN, wireless. It's got the Ethernet port, USB, 400 megahertz, 4 megabyte flash storage, which is kind of small. Same thing with the memory. So with this talk, I'm taking this device and trying to pack as much awesomeness into it as I can, while still keeping the same case. And there's really no reason behind that, besides I don't own a 3D printer, and I thought it would be neat to make that a challenge. And I'll go into what I managed to pack into the device and still keep the case, though there's plenty of really shitty Dremel work. Okay, so keeping the same small form factor, you got the wireless Ethernet, you got the same processor, but we want to double the flash storage, though you can quadruple it, but there is some issues with that. Double the memory. There's a serial port on board, so you add your own connector. Micro SD card reader for removable storage. It's actually USB micro SD, so, and add a second Ethernet port. Because the whole goal of this, outside of having fun hardware hacking, is actually using it on penetration testing to bring it into an environment, plug it in, 2 Ethernet ports, bridge the connection, and be able to monitor traffic. Throw in, well, I'll get to it in a second, some advanced stuff, and it becomes a pretty neat device on engagements. It also runs off of just 5-volt USB, which comes in handy. And I'll talk about that a little more in a bit. With the case, and I'll get into the exact parts that I used and where I got them from, so when these slides are available online, you can just go get those parts. When it comes to the USB hub, the network adapter, I wanted everything to be small and compact because I still want room in there to do whatever I wanted. And this slide came from a previous talk where I hadn't integrated the Teensy. Anybody familiar with the Teensy? And this is where I'm ripping off Adrian right here, because the stuff that he's coded for that, to be able to use it on penetration testing is pretty darn cool. So, the Teensy device itself, Arduino, if I'm not butchering that name. With this particular device, being a smaller version of it, you're able to emulate a keyboard. A hit device, actually not just a keyboard, a hit device, you can emulate a mouse as well. So when it's plugged into a computer, with the code that you write, you can have it execute mouse and keyboard commands. This is great for penetration testing. And my goal was, when putting it into the WR703N, to be able to remotely control this device and have it execute commands when you want it to. Sorry, I'm getting a little thirsty. That's the one best thing about B-Sides, is drinking. You don't do that at Stuffy Utter. But when you do talk technology at Stuffy Utter conferences, you scare the crap out of them. A couple links, and like I said, Adrian's site about integrating the Raspberry Pi and his recipes. Excellent content to get you started on doing some really neat stuff. Actually been a couple of years now, the USB hub, USB storage idea, serial port, these are just links to get you started because these individuals do a great job of documenting it. Also, the link at the top, the actual wiki itself. People just keep hammering away at this device, hardware hacking wise, to where they're getting all the pinouts of every connection on the device, just documenting as much as they can without being provided the data sheets of the actual processor. Way beyond what I can do. Again, not an electrical engineer. This is stuff I've taught myself, and how I put this presentation together is to anybody that, I mean, we're all technical here, we're all geeks, we're all dorks, but if you've never opened up something to take it apart and play with, don't know how to solder, I got a pretty crappy setup to do this. Anybody can do it. It's pretty much the main point of that, because I'm nobody special. So, when it came to the idea of the Super Minipwner, this is what I wanted. It's got one USB port. So, I'm going to take the USB hub, got a network adapter, SD card storage. Wanted to turn into that. And this was like the original model because I got the SD card on the outside. The serial port connector was on the outside as well, just because it fit with whatever other stuff I had on my desk to be able to interface with it. So this is kind of more what it looks like now. Or at least it did. And it was certainly a challenge to get that all to fit. What I actually ended up doing was ordering more Teensies. I only had one at the time when I was playing around with it. I was like, well, I'd like to be able to remove the connectors so that I can use it for other testing. But again, my goal was to fit it all in that stupid little package it comes with and have it work. So its final form is this. And actually, I mean, I'll be plugging in and demonstrating it, but I always show and tell. You always got to show what you have and pass it around. So don't worry about breaking it all. It's been cracked open and pulled apart so many times. And I've tested it. Always with presentations, make sure you test beforehand. It will work. So this is the device itself. So when it comes to upgrading it, doubling the memory, there's great documentation online about finding the right memory chip. You actually desolder what's on it, add your own. to get it to 64 megabytes. Doubling the flash is pretty easy, and I did mention you can quadruple it to 16 megabytes, though there is issues with the onboard wireless working with that. So I just stuck with 8 megabytes. In any applications that take up too much space, I store an SD card. I should have changed this line here. Desoldering. Soldering is relatively easy. For the flash chip, yes. For the memory, I didn't bring them with me. My pile of destroyed TP-Link devices. It's a good thing that they're sub $25. Though it is a bad thing that it takes about a month when ordering on eBay for it to come from overseas. So if you're going to do this, please buy yourself 2. So you don't have to wait. Trust me, I did, and that's never fun. Okay, so some lessons learned for me when doing this. And the reason I say this, get to in the next slide, I successfully did it once, where I actually removed the memory chip from it and put a new memory chip on. 1 set of 4. So $70 down the drain. And that's the only reason why I like working for a consulting company. They're like, hey, we want you to do this stuff. We want you to use these devices on penetration tests. We'll pay for some of this stuff. So yes, I didn't waste my money. So you've been warned with that. The good thing is, there's this awesome gentleman from China that actually sells these devices pre-modded on eBay for $40. That's the extra $15 for doubling the memory, double the flash. Way worth the time, unless it's for educational experience. In that case, buy a couple devices and prepare for an educational experience.
For science.
Yes. And this is new. I was just checking out his site recently. He actually has images now of how he removes the memory. And I thought it would be with a reflow oven, which I don't have. And I haven't had the time to use my toaster oven for that. But he actually uses a heat gun to remove the memory, which is pretty cool. And he has images showing that, which is helpful. He didn't have those images when I was trying to figure it out. What sucks is I was succeeded on the first try. So I was like, hey, this ain't that bad. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so I stopped doing that. But his site is excellent for getting that device, again, for $40. He also integrates, connects to the serial connection and routes it out through the USB port that actually powers the device, which is helpful. You can also buy a rock from him from China for $1. I thought that was interesting. Sells rocks. He's out now. I checked. He's out of rocks. But he's got plenty of those TP-Link devices. I actually ordered 2 more because when putting this together, I broke another one. So I need more. This is the USB hub that I use. Being in the Northeast, you guys don't have a Fry's Electronics or a Micro Center. So I don't know what the equivalent up here is outside of going online and buying this. But they have online sites, so that's the actual product code from Fry's. And the reason I like this particular device, this particular hub you'll see later on, is the size. That's the internals. Though I do have to say, it is a cheap piece of crap. I have more piles of these than I do TP-Links with my education process. But they're about $350, so I buy like 5 at a time. This particular USB to Ethernet, I picked for one main reason. It is white and matches the color of the original case. That was the main reason. Second to that, which I found out later on, it actually supported driver-wise in OpenWRT. So I cared about the color first. This is just something that I pick up in the checkout line while you're waiting at my local electronics store. It comes with the actual SD card, and this is really what I want, is a really small USB to SD card reader, again, to fit inside the device. This idea is not mine at all, but it is an amazing idea. This is from the gentleman that has the Minipwner site. I think you can only get these on eBay. A sharper image battery. I guess originally created for cell phone backup. It is actually the same size as the TP-Link, and it's also in white, so it just looks great together. It's also got a switch on it, so when you plug it in, it's not necessarily powered on. And if you're hunting behind a computer to plug this device in on your penetration test, it actually has a flashlight. And actually, that is handy, so you can see behind whatever workstation and whatever business you're at. So, but I think there's still kind of one on eBay. I saved this. This is a project I recently found online, and I saved this till after the battery so I can talk about it. But what this gentleman did was he cut the bottom off of the sharper image battery and replaced the top of the TP-Link device and connected the power directly to it instead of through the USB port. I'm going to be doing this next because that's pretty awesome. Especially when it's directly connected and you got the switch. You're not draining the battery. And with the device anyway, when you're in an environment, you're powering it to micro USB. So this instead, it's got a mini USB port to charge it. So you just use that cable instead. So you power the battery powers the device, sniff all the traffic, and hack all the things. This is my work setup. It's so my advice to you is have a clean environment. Not set down your pliers or your tweezers and then play Where's Waldo with that. So I have nothing special on this desk that you can't pick up. Well, probably a Radio Shack, but again, Fry's Electronics is awesome. You need to move to the southwest or the southeast to experience that store. It is the best thing ever. And you can buy dip switches and refrigerators in the same place. So this is what the USB hub looks like when everything's taken apart. And as you can see, it's pretty small, and that's why I like it. Even though these pads are crap and will come up just because they don't like it. Also, because this device, I'm assuming, is made not in America. And this is a good lesson when you're wiring everything together. And I may pop it open at the end so you see the mess that is inside the device that's being passed around. Always keep track of the color of wires where you're connecting them. Perfect example is this particular hub has blue wires. I guess they ran out of black to represent ground. But they have some black. But then there's gonna be a mix of pictures in here where it looks like, oh, you know, I use different wires for this picture and that picture because there's multiple TP-Links. Again, I broke one putting this together, and when I was documenting it, I was like, oh, I forgot to take a picture of this. So the first thing I do is remove the USB port, and I'll connect the hub to it. But for the wiring, because of the size, and I like to keep it all in that little case, I use wire wrap. Not necessarily what it's, you know, the main purpose of it, but it does a job. And like I said, compact, small wires. And this is why I like the USB hub. With this small container, this is actually an empty case. There really isn't anything in here. I already broke what's in it. But it's good for demonstrations. When you pop the lid off, there's a couple risers that the board sits on. And what I do is, because it's flat enough and small enough, I fit that underneath. So that, like previous slide, I have way more room for activities to put before I pack the lid on and smush it all together. So it's able to fit underneath. You can see I use the original cables that came with the USB hub, and it's, you know, hey, blue wire. So always keep track. When you're taking stuff apart, take pictures. Excuse me for the quality of these photos. The best camera I have is my cell phone, which is better than the point and shoot that I have as well. So with the USB hub underneath, one of the connections that come back up is connecting to the original USB connector. I just, the points that connected down here, I snip them and I kind of peel them up. And I peel off, there's actually a back plate on here. It's one of my first mistakes when I was putting it together. I'm like, why is this not working? The back plate was still on there, and one of these points was actually touching it and grounding, which I don't have an electrical engineering degree, but that doesn't work. So I got the wire wrap coming out through one of the holes in the bottom, connecting. So the outside USB port is still more room for activities. There's still that USB port to use to connect what other devices you want to. Also in this picture, up here is actually the pads for the serial port in and out. Those pads are very delicate, and you won't rip them off. But luckily, where they trace to, actually this one traces down to here, where the points on the resistors, you can actually tap into them, which actually is easier to do. And then what I learned from the guy that sells rocks from China is that what he wires it directly through the USB port. He actually sells a TTL serial to USB cable for you that you can plug in and plug into your computer to interface it through the serial port. So the board's on the bottom of the case. Here's a close-up of the two connections. And when I say I'm using different pictures, in this, we got red and yellow here, blue and yellow here. This one don't work anymore. I'll back up a bit. One of the other things, actually the main thing I'd like to talk about is the actual integration with the TNC. And a lot of amazing people have done work identifying the general purpose input-output registers. And I'll get to that a little bit later, but I just wanted to highlight the area where they identified two that are easily accessible and not used by anything else on the board. So here's the connections. Here's my really crappy connections to it. Hot glue is amazing for all of these things to prevent it just ripping off. Don't burn yourself. So I didn't take a close-up picture, so I found this one online. This particular individual, he connected to them. Here's an actual picture that I took. My ghetto setup, 2 magnifying glasses to be able to have those wires touch and just tap them with the soldering iron. I guess people that don't solder, and I did learn this the hard way, using the rosin, coat it with the rosin, tin the wires, and really when it's set there, just tap it, and it'll flow all nicely and connect. So that's how you do that. Oh, and don't hit the soldering iron to your plastic magnifying glass, because it'll melt it. All right. Where's the device at right now? Everybody's seen it? All right, I'm gonna plug
I
it
didn't put
in.
any malware on it, I promise.
That would be awesome and worthy of a talk.
I did because I have to go next. I don't want to ruin your talk, so I look better by comparison.
Just added a little rule for the
We're
core.
actually working on it, but we'll talk later. We're working on that.
Yeah, with your hardware device, yeah, yes, I would love to talk later. I'm just plugging that in so it can power up. More beer. And the clicker, I forgot. What you see here is that, on top of a refrigerator at Fry's, you can buy a dip switch. And the purpose of this whole talk, is the USB port that powers the device. You can connect and run the serial connection through it so you can interact with the device. But I have these switches in place so that with the teensy, you plug it into a computer with the code, it acts as a hit device and runs the code. So when you plug the USB port from the TP link with the teensy in it, with the right diff switch is set, that's the mode it's in. The teensy will interact with the computer. So that's why the diff switch is in place, and this is the actual picture of the one that broke, because there's blue wires in it already. But here's the actual connection itself, and my awesome Microsoft Paint skills in copying and pasting. So here's the actual serial port connection on the board with the pads that lift off really easily, coming into the 2 and 3, so that when those are set, it'll communicate out actually through the USB port, which gives you serial. And then with the image that I stole, these are the two GPIO connections. They connect to the teensy so that when they're set, the teensy does what you want it to do. And from the teensy, I actually removed, there's supposed to be a slash for this, I guess it didn't make it to the presentation, because I actually removed the USB port, because while there is fun, there is space for all sorts of activities, not with this USB connector. Kind of needed to take that off so it would fit in. So I connect directly to the data plus and minus pins on the USB, wire them up to the diff switch, so when 1 and 4 are set, I'll be able to communicate directly with the teensy to program it, or when it's actually being used in some type of penetration testing scenario, it'll interact with wherever you want to pump. And then being powered by one of the slots on the USB hub. Is there, I guess while I go into, some of the simple slides with the code on it, is there any questions at all with this? Any questions about really crappy hardware hacking, or other trials and tribulations I went through to get this to work?
The hardware versions of the 703, did you run into trouble with like being mislabeled on the outside and variations and that?
Luckily, no. I've been lucky, and I only ordered a couple from various vendors on eBay, but most of the ones I've been getting is from that one gentleman, because it's got the RAM and the flash upgrade. And when he sends it to you, you actually get the 16 megabytes with a custom image from him, because for some reason the wireless doesn't work with that flash chip, so he modifies it so it will. But I like to use the latest and greatest from the OpenWRT website. So he actually provides you with the 8 megabyte chip, so I put that on instead. Actually, back up. I had the 16 megabytes on there, and I had connected USB, had a bunch of devices hooked up to it, and nothing worked. And you check all your connections, you check them again and again and again and again. And I'm like, I put the 8 megabyte on, worked flawlessly. I have no idea. He does provide you with the 8 megabyte. If you were going to order from him and send him a comment saying, hey, include the 60 megabyte, but make sure the 8's on there, so you don't have to fuss with it. And again, I have no idea why it didn't work. So no is the answer to your question. I've been pretty lucky. Though it is, it's a cheap device. Waiting for it to come in is always. Now you just jog my memory. I didn't even get a device. I got like a cell phone charm. And, oh man, this is, if I were to do this talk again, that picture of it, because I took a picture and sent it to him and was like, what the hell is this? It said on the outside packaging, that it was a TP-Link WR703N. So I ended up, and then they haggle with you because they're like, oh, there's such a small margin on selling these devices, and we pay for shipping and this and that. So I was like fighting with them. I was like, they didn't even end up sending me the device. They reimbursed me, and I was out like $2-3. But again, it's all for research, and I lost way more at breaking the actual devices. So I guess it's an interesting story getting a Bungie cell phone charm. It was like a magnifying glass like thing that you could hold up, but it like fell apart the second You tried doing anything with it? I was wondering, it's like, did I drunk order something? You know, like, because I'm actually interested in having an eyepiece for doing some of that work. Because, you know, it's really tiny components. Oh, that's how I knew when I read the package that it was the TP-Link, and I was like, wow, some guy really didn't care, whoever was packaging that. And this is Microsoft's fault when I have internet connection sharing and I plug the device in. I don't know what IP address gets assigned to it. So I have to listen for a second. One of the best things when you're messing with this device, there's an LED by the network port. When you see this come on and then start flashing, it's just like a rainbow across the sky, because you know you didn't F anything up and it still works. In the process of closing the file, looks like I was capturing a lot of traffic for way too long. 166. I would connect directly to it with the serial port, but I have it in. Somebody set the dip switches on it.
How could that be?
So the TP-Link wouldn't work. Bear with me as I type one hand. Is there any more questions?
What's the password?
Funny story behind that. It is actually the password on the routers and servers of the bank that I worked at 10 years ago that was acquired. They had a really shitty password. It was Hudson River Bank and Trust. If anybody's from the Northeast. I can say that because they don't exist anymore. And the world is better for it. Okay, so let's see. I'll bring up the slides again, because I know this thing's working. So when interfacing, and actually if you have any questions about this, I don't know squat. This is, I really don't. But that's why I do this. It's all for educational. This is all fun. And now I get paid to do fun stuff like this. So when interacting with general purpose input-output registers, they've already identified, and on the board itself, it's R15 and R17 interface with GPIO 7 and GPIO 29. This is pretty much what you need to do to get it set to be ready for you. Tell it to turn it on. This is pretty much where you set it to no signal. So when those wires are connected to the TP-Link, right here, I have it set up, and there's a little bit of lines of code for the TP-Link, but it's just waiting for a signal. So when you actually set it, and it's a 3.3 volt from the device, it takes 5 volts in, but that's what gets sent out from these pads. That's enough for when it sees that, it'll do what you want it to do. I think they've documented 15 GPIOs that are potentially available on the device. So when you throw in some logic, that's a lot of different sets of commands you can run in the environment. And I guess that, the goal is, with this device, is if you have it in the environment and you're sitting there listening to traffic, you can tell a lot just from listening to traffic. You can tell if somebody's even on the machine still, which is one of the main goals. This is, okay, somebody's not there, let's run the commands now. And using multiple GPIOs, multiple different scenarios, it grows exponentially in what you can do with this. And there's great examples of code on the Iron Geek website on what to do. A lot of fun stuff too if you want to mess with people, like random mouse clicks and stuff, which is fun, not usually for pen tests, but just I would think fun in general. So when you just echo a 1 to the value, it's on. The second you do that, power goes to one of these, what I have connected to it. It runs a code. And it runs a code because, I'll get to that in a second. It runs a code because I just have a stupid if statement waiting for when I establish in the pins that I'm activating, when it's reading power. And this is all encapsulated in a loop statement where you can set a delay and how often you want the loop to run. So it's continuously running, waiting. When you turn the power on and it hits one of these conditions, whatever code's in there, I'm going to do it. Before you take your TNC and get it all messed up with solder, to make sure that the GPIOs actually work, just take an LED, plug it, attach it to the wire on the positive side of GPIO, connect the other part to ground, and there's a lot of places that are documented ground. I attached it to right here, actually, the pad for the USB port in this image. So when you set it to on, it lights up. Again, the rainbow across the sky. So then you plug it into your. It's got the 5-minute signal, which is good because I'm yeah.
What's 5? No, I meant 2 of them. 2 rainbows.
2 rainbows so far?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Double
actually,
rainbow?
if both work, yeah, because you got to do one for each of the GPIOs. So
Double rainbow?
all right, so we got a couple minutes left. Let's see demonstration. So I got it plugged into. So that's a script that just sends a 1 to it, and there's a delay on the TNC, so when it picks that up, I just have it, I think with this particular one, I'm just planting a flag in the machine. And it'll close out that window after a delay. Then when I turn it off, I won't do that one anymore. Run the other one, wait for the loop to catch it, and then do something else. Really for penetration testing, I would suggest having one of these set to one of the awesome exploits created by Dave Kennedy in his SET framework, if you're familiar with that. His code, and that's actually a great piece of code to learn how to do some really fun stuff with the TNC. That just opened a command prompt, ran a bunch of, and I was doing it again, a bunch of commands so we can see it again. Just spit it to a file about information about this particular machine. It doesn't do anything fun or nasty. It is not only my personal laptop, but my work laptop. So let's turn that off. So it's off and won't run again. I think that's about it for the fun. Any additional questions as we're running low on time? Feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to be here and be at the after hours event because they offer beer and cigars. And tomorrow as well, just to hit me up if you want to know more about this. There's 15 possible. I think it. Oh, well, you got to desolder and then solder the other one again to test it. Though that would be awesome, and that would be a device in and of itself. And then you can program the LEDs to do all sorts of blinky stuff.
Have you tried that recipe?
No, though I mean I am a fan of beer. I drink straight liquor, brown liquors, any brown liquors. I'm a door connoisseur of that. But
Yeah.
mixing, is that good at all? Anybody had it? I mean, originally it was White Russian. People have probably had that before, but they're just getting crazy with their. See, I didn't even know it was different from regular one. So. Yeah, kamikaze, yup. If you've been to college, you've had that. Any other questions? If not, I'm gonna have another beer. So thank you guys.